In today's episode, we spoke about building your resilience, coping with imposter syndrome, and first steps to bettering your mental well-being. This is the story of Megan Gamble, founder of #Me. Okay, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Brilliant, yeah. My name is Megan. I am the founder of #Me. Graduated from Loughborough in 2018 and then started #Me, which is a mental health and wellbeing initiative. So we run a 12-week course and we currently work with Loughborough University as well as a few other universities and colleges. I'm from South Africa originally, but we moved here when I was 6, living in the Midlands, so Market Harbour, it's near Leicester. I think Leicester City Football Club put us on the map, so not too far.
And why did you decide to start #Me?
Gosh, $1 million question. There's so many reasons. I think the main things that come to mind is just my experience of being a student. During my 3rd year, I did a 6-month placement and then 6 months studying abroad, so I split the year. And when I was on placement, it was a very corporate environment, and I kind of was, it was very eye-opening to stress, burnout, and you don't realise that as a student, like that's what's waiting for us. So that was really eye-opening. But then actually when I was in Canada, that's where I studied abroad, I was then obviously an international student. So suddenly in this new culture, and I've travelled a lot and I feel quite comfortable in new environments, but trying to navigate this new culture, make new friends whilst trying to study, explore, America, Canada, that was quite tricky to navigate. So I think I realised, actually that's what a lot of students go through when they come to Loughborough as well, because we do have a lot of international students here. So it was kind of those combinations of those experiences. And then I was also the welfare rep for the University Women's Hockey Club in my final year. And during that time, I would speak to 5-6 girls every week about their challenges with selection, anxiety over selection, pressure for their scholarships, eating disorders, bullying, and it was again really eye-opening, and I realised that there's so many students out there that are actually kind of struggling. They've got no one to speak to, and there is so much support around. It's just it's quite daunting perhaps to go speak to a professional or an adult. So it was kind of that 3rd year, my experience as well of speaking to these students, that was a sort of a light bulb moment for, I think actually I can maybe do something here and make a difference and help them.
How did you come from like that sort of background? Like, did you study the brain?
No. I studied international business, but it was always a toss-up between business and psychology. My dad's a psychologist, my mum's a head teacher, so I think I always grew up in that sort of nurturing environment, seeing them help others. We had a very open house. We had people come and stay with us if they needed to. We've always been very involved in the local community, so I think I've always been exposed to that. But I've also been quite entrepreneurial and always trying to, sell my toys or do something from a young age. So, I did a typical gap year before university, and I just really enjoyed being in different cultures. So I think the international business, that really interested me to learn about different cultures, negotiating and how that all works. So that was kind of why I chose to do that degree. And I'm so glad that I did, because it's given me so much insight into how I could then start this initiative. It's all really worked out well. But then, I fall back on, I've got sort of a team of advisors who are GPs, psychologists. My dad helps a lot with some of the content and things. So it's great. I think I've got the best of both worlds, really.
What would you say is the biggest thing you've learnt from your team?
Gosh, I think they push me probably out my comfort zone more than I would. And that's something I'm always encouraging others to do. So I'm always... I'm a big believer in to learn, to grow, to live a really fulfilling life. You have to push yourself. And actually, Stephen Bartlett always says it's good to be out your comfort zone. You should, experience imposter feelings. And, that's the opposite of what we think, So actually, they really help me to keep pushing me, keep motivating me. Because I think when you work for yourself, when you're running your own thing, especially, working from home and then COVID, it can be quite isolating, and you need to be really disciplined, self-motivated. But actually being around this team where we bounce off each other and just seeing their joy, their passion for what, they're doing, it's really infectious. So, and then it helps me to kind of give that back. So I think they just, teach me to keep being positive, to keep going, to persevere, which, sometimes, although you really want to, it is tough, especially because I think as the founder of a business, you face setbacks, challenges, and it can be so easy sometimes to think, I can't see a way through here, or, it's never going to be what I thought it would be. So they're just so supportive and encouraging, and I really value that.
You mentioned Stephen Bartlett, by the way. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
you also touched on imposter syndrome. Is that something that you've tackled?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone hasn't. I think you'd be lying if you said you hadn't. And I've had a journey with imposter syndrome, and I think what I've finally realised is that it's good to have, and that might sound so bizarre, but and Stephen Bartlett actually says that I'll stop name dropping him now, but yeah. So he says that's good, like we need to have these feelings, because if we're always comfortable and we're always, the person in the room that thinks, yeah, we know the most, great, then you're not striving for more, you're not reaching your full potential, you're not challenging yourself. So actually, I think I've changed my mindset and my relationship with feeling like an imposter to be more of a positive thing, where I think, okay, great, I'm like stepping out my comfort zone here, I'm growing, I'm learning. And I think Richard Branson said, I want to be the dumbest person in the room. And I've sort of adopted that mindset a bit. Okay, what can I learn from this experience? Let me actually challenge myself a bit here. And I think a few things that have helped me in particular is talking about it. So I think often we think if we talk about imposter syndrome, then we're going to make it worse, or like it's this big secret and no one feels it, it's just us, and now we're exposing ourselves. But that's not true. So it's actually really empowering to talk about it, helps to process it, helps those around you. And I think secondly, just remembering the positive impact we have. So, I do a lot of maybe events where I'm speaking and I think I'm not qualified. Look at who I'm standing with. Who am I to be, speaking to all these people here? But I think it really helps me when I remember like the positive feedback we've had from students where they've said, you've really helped me to be comfortable with who I am, or to get over this challenge, or, it's been really life-changing. And actually, when I remember these little moments, it's not just stats or numbers, it's real people that we're working with. And when I kind of break that down and think about that, it's so empowering, it just motivates me to think, actually I can do this, like, I want to help more people, let's keep going. So I think just trying to think of the positive things really helps to break down those imposter feelings if it does become a negative thing for me.
I was one of those people on your programme many years ago.
So there's like 3,000 students I think we've worked with today, and it's so hard to keep track of everyone. But when you got in touch, I thought I recognised your name, and I really try and remove, like, because it's personal things that you guys are sharing. So I always try and keep it separate, because I never want anyone to feel like they shared and then that's part of who they are. Like you are who you are. And anything you struggle with, that's not your identity. So I'm really careful actually to go and dig around at what people, who they were and what do they sign up with, so I thought I'd recognise. So yeah, what was your experience?
Oh, it was amazing. I really, really loved it. I think I was connected with one of the is it facilitators? Yeah, and she was amazing. Like she kind of made the whole experience really great. Yeah. So we were supposed to meet as a team, and then I think it was just me and her who turned up one time. And it was obviously that can be a bit intimidating when I expect it to be like a group of people and then it's just one-on-one chat. But it was actually but it was great. I really found a friend in her, so she was great, and it was great. So
Do I don't know if you shared that with her, but that would be great to tell her, because it that's problem solving, because things happen when you're a student. So now it's so easy. I'm like 5 years removed, and I think, commit to this, like it's going to help you. But when you're a student, things crop up. It's hard to juggle everything, and the whole idea of what we do is that it's not supposed to be like you've got to be there every week. It's meant to be it's your own choice. If you want to commit to this, then you should do that. But we don't want to force this upon you, because it's all about self-management, and actually if you put what you put in, you'll get out. So the fact that she persevered as well, and that actually I'm a big believer of everything happens for a reason or can work out positively, and you got a great friendship from it, and maybe you wouldn't have bonded as well. So that's really encouraging to hear. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. So would you say that imposter syndrome is linked to resilience or no?
Oh, that's tricky. I think it is linked, and I mean the word resilient is thrown around so much, and it's such a, what is it, and it can mean different things for different people in different scenarios. But I think probably the more resilient you are, the easier it is to deal with imposter feelings. As I said earlier, I think I've tried to turn imposter feelings into a positive thing and actually see it as like a good thing. If I'm not feeling like an imposter, I'm way too comfortable right now and I'm not pushing myself. And I think I've definitely developed resilience as a student, but then when I started #me, and now actually when I do bigger things, because I'm more resilient, I feel more comfortable in that environment anyway, even though it is a step out of my comfort zone. So I think resilience is something that is helpful in so many different ways. You know, we should always be trying to become more resilient, and especially for imposter feelings, I think it can really help.
So how would a student or a recent graduate build their resilience?
Oh gosh, I wish I knew all the answers, but I can only speak, I guess, from my experience and from the students we've worked with. I've sort of got a lot of insight. I think when we think about resilience or trying to build a healthier, positive lifestyle, because it's all linked, right? We think we need to go to extreme lengths here. Like, we need to change our lives, and that's not sustainable, and we can actually burn out from that. And it's this like up, down, and that's so emotionally draining as well. And it takes all our time and our energy and our focus. So I think small little changes, discipline is a key. So you hear it a lot with people who are trying to exercise more. You know, everyone's like, oh, just stick to it. It's all about discipline. And it's true. It's so annoying to hear, but it's true. And actually, it's just the small changes that we can make, one thing at a time, that can really just help to build that resilience. And community, being part of a community, having people around you, it's basic things. You know, I think sometimes we think to be more resilient, we have to become a different person. We have to completely change our lives, or we have to do these big practices every day. But for me, I think it is just about having positive people around you, trying to have a more positive outlook. So by that, I don't mean you need to be happy all the time. You don't need to be positive, but it's just trying to, again, flip your mindset. And instead of thinking, okay, how can I avoid burnout here? I've got exams, deadlines coming up. It's how can I live a positive, healthy lifestyle? So you're thinking about positive things rather than the negative things. And I think it's just these little small tweaks that you can make. And if you do that enough, it becomes sort of a new habit. It becomes part of your lifestyle. It's subconscious. And then before you know it, you are more resilient, but you haven't actively worked at it. It's just part of now who you are. And then it's more sustainable to continue that lifestyle.
And where did you find your community, either at Loughborough or kind of after?
Yeah, life after uni. So hockey was a massive part of my Loughborough experience. You know, I played for the university team, and there was, I think, over 100 girls. You know, it was great, and we were such a good supportive community. I love sport as an outlet anyway. So I've always, you know, at school, I was one of those that was like in the rounders, in the cricket, in the hockey, you know, like everything I could do. So I think for me, sport is a good stress outlet anyway. I've always tried to do that kind of thing. So that was a big part of my experience at Loughborough, I would say. But then just friends that I've grown up with, I'm really fortunate that I've sort of lived in the same town. So I had some really good school friends. You don't keep in touch with everyone. And again, I've had to learn that it's, you know, the classic saying, it's quality, not quantity. So I've really learned to invest in those friendships that are really uplifting, that build me up, but accountability as well, you know, that can call me out on things or challenge me if I'm not living the best way. So that's really helped, I think, as well. And actually a lot of international friends. I love traveling. So when I was in Canada, two of those girls were actually my bridesmaids at my wedding. And I think we have a really similar mindset where we just want to push ourselves out of our comfort zones, explore new cultures, new places. So it's just, it's difficult to find your people, I suppose. But actually, you know, when you almost don't put pressure on it, then that's when these like great friendships can blossom. So yeah, a bit of a few different groups, I suppose.
Have you ever had to cut off someone who hasn't been, I don't know, hitting your values or hasn't been a good friend, I guess? Yeah,
I think I have, sometimes intentionally, sometimes it's just naturally happened. I think that for anyone in life, that's a healthy thing to do, is almost to, so being mindful and being self-aware is so important. And then that like translates into other things like friendships, relationships, work, you know, the environment that you're working in as well. And I think being self-aware is great because when you know your triggers, you know, you can better manage things that are in your control. So much of what happens in life is outside of our control. So if we can identify what we can manage to help ourselves feel happier, to boost our mood, you naturally gravitate towards people who are similar and then who align with your values. So I think it starts with you rather than like, what is that person projecting onto me? Like, who am I? What do I want out of life? And then naturally you can start seeing, oh, like they're really similar, our values align, or you gravitate towards these people anyway. And then I think, as I said, naturally I just distanced from some people, and that was probably quite an easy way for it to have happened. There was no like big confrontation or conflict. It was just, yeah, actually we're just at different stages of life now. Like, we want different things out of life, and that's not I'm right, you're wrong. It's just different, and that's okay. But then I think, there are still a few situations where you have to think, okay, this is maybe a bit toxic, or it's maybe not giving me what I need. And then you do have to be quite intentional about that. But there's positive ways of doing that. It's not always easy. But again, I think if you're really confident in who you are and what you want from life, it's easier to deal with that, because I am definitely low-key a people pleaser, and I hate conflict. I just want everyone to be happy, and like I'm quite a positive person, so I'm like, okay, it's fine, like they didn't mean it, like let's just move on, and you brush it under the carpet and it happens again. So I think being really comfortable in who I am, being really self-aware, and knowing like my needs. So if I've maybe spent time with that person and then I'm quite reflective of what I'm doing, how I'm spending my time, and I think afterwards, yeah, actually I'm not feeling that great, or that's really bugged me, then the more that happens, like the more you become aware of that, then the easier it becomes to actually put your foot down a little bit or distance yourself. So yeah, I just think self-awareness is so important, and it really helps with friendships as well.
And what would you say are your values? Have they changed after you've graduated? Have they changed after becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I've always tried to have like some really core values. Like, I try and be a really good person, help those around you. I think when you spread joy, like it makes you feel good as well. It's like, why wouldn't you want to do that? So I always try and live like really positively. I mean, that's not to say that I'm happy all the time. As I said earlier, like, bad things happen. That's part of life. There's ups and downs. But I think I try to be a positive person and have like a positive community around me, and that really aligns with my values of wanting to make the world a better place. Like, that's at the heart of who I am and what I do. And I think that comes a lot from my parents, from experiences, from traveling. I've seen people that are really struggling or that have nothing, and it makes you realize how fortunate we are here. I think I can be quick to moan, oh, the train's like 5 minutes late, how inconvenient, what a first world problem. Like, that's fine. It's 5 more minutes to just stop and do nothing and just like take a few breaths. Like, let's be positive about it. So yeah, I think I really am trying to just help others reach their full potential and just to live their best lives, as cheesy as that sounds. But probably because I know when I was at university, it wasn't always the best time of my life. And I think it's such an expectation that you're just gonna go to uni and everything's to be great, and you're going to find who you are and meet your best friends and have the best time, and like life's going to be great. But your 20s are hard. Like, there's so much to navigate. So if you have like like for me, my vision is just to like try and be positive and try and help others reach their full potential. Then that kind of everything I do, if it doesn't fit into that, then yeah, it's probably not something I should be spending my time and energy on. So I think that's like my big picture, my big vision for #me as well. We're trying to equip and empower people to better handle life's ups and downs. Like, that's what we're all about, and that fits really well into that. So if an opportunity comes along, or friendships, or we think, oh, should we try do this instead, like, does it fit into that vision, that mission? And for me, I guess I'm really fortunate that the way I live my life and what I'm doing as like a business, it aligns. It's the same. It's like a passion project. So that definitely makes it easy. I know for a lot of people that maybe work in a different company where maybe the values don't align, that must be really challenging. And I'm so fortunate that for me, I get to dictate it a little bit, but it does, it stemmed from what I like as a person and what I want to do. So that certainly helps.
And how do you practice mindfulness?
So I try and actually say no to things and just create space. I think I have been really guilty in the past of just being busy, but almost being like busy for busy's sake, being too busy. I don't know how to stop because I'm just always on, switched on, busy. Yes. That's it. And I'm like a dog chasing like all these things, like what's next? And that's not healthy. And I've like, the penny has dropped, I've realised that. So I actually just try and create space to just like be, we're human beings, not human doings. I love that saying. So I think because I love sport, I love socialising with friends, I love working, some of those things are like really positive things. Like good things to do, but it's still taking up my time, my energy I'm having to like give myself. So I've actually had to be really intentional with, so in my calendar, I'll actually block out time where it says like night off, do nothing, you know, like self-care or have a bath or whatever it might be. And you know, it's silly, like I'm making time to do nothing, but you need to protect your time. And I think it's easy for me to see, like, to not look at the whole week and think Friday, yeah, great, I'm free on Friday, okay, let's go out for like a meal with friends. But actually what I haven't realised is Monday I've been in London, like Tuesday in Birmingham, and it's the whole week. And then by Friday I'm exhausted, and then I feel, oh, I need to let these people down now, or like, no, I don't want to let them down, people pleaser, like, okay, I'll just go, and you know, I'll be really tired for the rest of the weekend. So if I can like kind of be mindful of my week, then I can block out that time and create a bit of like space to just like breathe and step back from everything. So yeah, I think protecting my time is like the biggest way I've learned to kind of, and through that I'm more aware of what's going on. So my self-awareness has definitely improved. You know, I do a lot of appraisals with my team, but vice versa, where they give me feedback as well. And I've got a team of advisors, so I'm always asking them as well to give feedback. So I think that's helped me to be more present, to be more aware of like what's going on around me, because when you are running a business, you're very like forward thinking and what's next, and you don't often look back and celebrate your achievements either. So I've really had to learn to just stop and think, oh, that's a really cool moment we've just had, or you know. And again, my team, you asked earlier about my team, they're great for that. You know, they're so good at celebrating things and telling me like, just stop for a second, like we've just launched like 4 courses all at once, like 1,000 students are on our program right now, wow. And you know, I can be guilty sometimes of thinking, okay, like we've done that, but what's next? So you know, they're really good at kind of keeping me grounded in that moment, like being aware of like all of our achievements, and yeah, being really mindful, I suppose. And
how do you manage your time? You've mentioned like blocking your time. Do you have any tips that like students can take on board?
Yeah, so we look at planning in the course, and I think it's such a balance between over planning, being really rigid, and having like to-do list and thinking that's the best way to not miss anything, to manage your time, like micromanage every, you know, opportunity. And then equally like the flip side where you're really spontaneous and you don't perhaps manage things, and you know, okay, this is roughly what I want to maybe get done, like it'll happen when it happens, like I'll see how I'm feeling. And I think it's a real balance. Something that I have really instilled in like our team is buffers. So I think in the day I have like maybe 1 or 2 big things that they need to get done in that day. And I'll try and start my day by doing them. So there was a podcast called Eat Your Frog that I heard a while ago. Yeah, you've heard it. Great. Do you do that, or?
Yeah, so that's something that I studied in a module in my final year. It's like brilliant. Eat the frog, because it's the hardest thing to get it out of the way in the morning. Basically.
Yeah, and then you get such a sense of achievement when you've done it, and nothing else can be harder, right? So when you've done that, the rest of the day's a breeze, like, you know, it's great. So I really try and stick to that. And I think I first heard it at university, didn't really understand it, and then I like looped back and heard it again recently. So I think I try and at the start of the day, if I start the day well, like good breakfast and, you know, like have a bit of time, like think about what's coming ahead for the day, like a bit of mindfulness. And then I start with like a really difficult task. Then I'm like set up for the day. But what I've tried to start doing is having buffer times, because there's always emails that are coming in, messages, there's like a crisis, there's this, can you know, put out this fire? And so by the end of the day, sometimes I think, oh, I've done nothing. I've done loads, but in my head, I've done nothing, because my list is not ticked off. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, I feel like I need to chat to you like, on the reg to just like, yeah, it's not just me. So I've told my team as well, like just have buffers, because even when you're studying, like maybe you're just a bit fed up and you just need like a half an hour break, or a friend calls you and they're like, oh, you know, I'd really love to go for a walk, are you free now? If you can have little buffers in your day, or like a 2-hour period where you haven't blocked it out for anything, then you've got a bit of scope. So I think that helps with that balance of like being flexible, you can be a bit spontaneous, your mood can dictate how you spend your day, but you know you've got these modules that you need to do this for, or you've got, you know, this email you need to send, or whatever the task is, that's like non-negotiable. And I think a lot of people enjoy working well under pressure. So, okay, fine, if you work well under pressure and you're like a night owl and it's like 10 p.m. and it's, oh my gosh, I haven't done this yet, then maybe actually you'll do those emails, or you'll do that like revision plan in the night before, like it's the end of the day, and that can work well for you. So I think no matter what kind of person you are, whether you then do it first thing, do it at the end of the day under pressure, like, you know, that's when you work best, or maybe you do it in like the middle of the day after you've had a more gentle morning of, you know, going out for a run or whatever, I think that can work for anyone. So yeah, just having a few things that you have to get done, having a bit of a buffer, and then like that back burner thing. So if you've got a day where you feel, yeah, I'm feeling really up for it, I've got so much energy, I'm focusing so well today, I've got my phone on do not disturb, let's go, then you can pick out some of those things from your back burner, or get ahead with some of your other things. But then maybe you have a day where you just think, today is just a hard day, I'm just not feeling it. Then great, try and do those things that are non-negotiable, like that, those 1 or 2 tasks which should only hopefully take an hour or 2, and then just give yourself like space that day to do nothing, because you've done the essential things. So I think that's really helped me, and I think that can work if you're a student or in the working world.
And you've gone from being all you to then having a team. How did you learn to delegate? Because that's something that I found really, really hard, being a leader, especially as a little bit of a perfectionist as well. Like, I want everything to be to my standard.
Yeah.
So then when it's not, it's definitely a struggle. Do you have any tips for that?
We're so similar. It's something I'm still like working on, and I think even those who have like cracked it, and they still probably struggle with handing things over or not like being in control. We love to be in control of things, don't we? So I think I've had to work at it. So I've had to actually tell myself, like, no, you can't do this, like you have to hand it over. So even if it goes against how I'm feeling and what I want to do, like I force myself, no, like you don't need to do this, someone else is more than capable. And I think what helped me is I actually flipped it, and I said to myself, you think you're so important, that you can do everything better than everyone else. And I was like, oh, okay, that's humbling, right? Like maybe they can do it better than you, So I think I had like a pep talk with myself, and what's the point in having a team if you're not going to use them? And I've intentionally tried to hire people that are different to me, like some are similar, some are different, like more creative minded, or why do I think I can do that better than them? That's what they're here for. So that certainly helped. And I think thinking long term. So yes, I know the perfectionist, like I know I can probably do that better than them. But then in the long term, are you going to just keep doing it? Like you're going to burn out, you're not going to be able to sustain this. So I've had to kind of tell myself, like teach them, invest in them, give them the resources, the time, like your energy, your time to really train them well in this. And okay, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve, like they might not get it right the first few times. As long as they're making new mistakes and we're learning and we're moving forwards, that's fine. And then actually like a month or 2 in, they're doing that really well. And it's such a great rewarding feeling, because you like, not only have you given a bit of yourself, like you're seeing someone else thrive and you played a part in that, but it does free up your own space, because then suddenly, oh, they're really capable in that. They can even go on to train someone else in that if they need to. You can then focus on this. So I think when that happens a few times and you can see the benefits and the rewards of it, it becomes easier to next time think, okay, I know this isn't like a quick win now, but it's like a long-term investment, it's worth it. Like I need to give my time now to then free up time in the future. But yeah, that I think the pep talk helped with kind of the perfectionist side of me. Like yes, I like to do things a certain way, but I don't know everything. I'm not the best at everything. So that kind of helped with that. And then, delegating is kind of thinking of the long-term benefits of that. I think they were the 2 key things that helped me.
And how, as a leader, do you become more self-aware of like your strengths and weaknesses?
I think it's so important to be open to having feedback and to reflecting. When you're a leader, you're giving feedback to those that you are kind of delegating things to or that you're overseeing, but that can go both ways. And I think it takes a strong person to be open to feedback, because some of it could be, criticism, it could be, actually, I think you let me down here, or you could have done that better. But how else are you going to become a better leader? And the greatest leaders are always open to being better. Like you should never think, yeah, cool, I've got this. You need to be open to that. So I think that's really helped me to be more self-aware, is to actually not have that top down but bottom up approach as well, where I'm always open to things. I've got like an open door policy, and then I've also got people above me, so having like a team of advisors, and that can be super informal. Like your mum might be the person that is that sounding board for you, or the person that's just like holding you accountable, and actually they know you really well, so that's a great choice to have as someone who can just help you to reflect, help you to consider like how you're being. Journaling is not for everyone, and I think I do journal like here and there, but not like daily. It's just not something that for me works in that capacity. Like quick things like the logbook we use, that for me is really manageable. So for me, kind of long written down self-reflection doesn't work, but actually talking, I'm like a bit of an external processor. So I have a few people that I know, like maybe at the end of every day, week, month, like I've got different people that I can then process things with. And actually something else that really helps me is listening to podcasts or TV documentaries where I can relate, or like reading a book. If I can relate to what's being said, it helps me to then process it and think, oh yeah, I do that, and that's the impact of it. So then I'm becoming more self-aware, but in like an indirect way. So I'm intentionally listening to these things that I think, yeah, I might get a lot from this, but it actually, it does improve your self-awareness without feeling like I'm sitting down, I'm going to journal, I'm going to reflect now, like what am I grateful for, what's the highlight, low light. So there's so many different ways, and I think when you get a bit creative and find what works for you, learning more about yourself becomes a joy, and then you see like the positive impact of it and the ripple effect of being more self-aware, on being more resilient, on being a better friend, on studying better because you know what works for you. So I think you then excited to almost know more about yourself, unlock your potential. Personality tests, they're always a good thing. If you're really unsure who you are, like what your strengths are, what's the best way for you to learn, then doing any kind of, there's loads of free online ones, any kind of personality. There's different names for them, but I think if you just type in like personality test or something like that, then that would give you some kind of idea of who you are, and then you can like explore that further.
And who would you say is your inspiration?
My mum and my dad. Yeah, no, honestly, I think my parents have been great role models for me. I'm really fortunate that they just set such a good example of a really strong work ethic, but also we had great family holidays, we had a lot of downtime. I was never like forced into doing things, but I was always pushed and encouraged to give something a go, or to keep trying even if I was sort of failing. I think I learned from a young age that it's okay to fail, and actually it's good. It's just about what you learn from it and then how you tackle it the next time. So they have really helped a lot with kind of my journey and where I am now. But then, yeah, Stephen Bartlett, I've mentioned a few times. I really like the sort of underdog, someone who kind of started with nothing, I suppose, or who just persevered and got to where they are and is continuing to try and make a positive change. That's not thought, yeah, great, I've made my millions, I'm done now. Like they're still trying to make the world a better place. Dr. Alex, he's brilliant. I think he's going out, meeting students, going into schools, does the Stompcast. Like I think it's so good that he's actually putting himself out there, having these real conversations. It's not all just kind of like online at a distance. It's so real, it's so vulnerable. So I think anyone who's out there being vulnerable, sharing the struggles that they're experiencing, it can be so tempting as a leader to put out this, like highlight reel or this persona of you've got everything together, like nothing, sends you over the edge or nothing can affect you. And actually people don't connect with that. It's so important to be vulnerable and authentic and be genuine. So anyone who's doing that, I'm a big fan of. And I try to actually diversify, and like I try not to just follow one person or one thing. I try and like get lots from, because I think it's good to have lots of different perspectives. Otherwise you can become quite narrow-minded, or you end up listening to content that affirms your beliefs or your way of thinking, and that again, that's like a bit of a slippery slope. So actually I sometimes put on things that are really controversial, or I think, oh, I'm not sure about this, but it's good because it helps me understand a different perspective, and it helps me become maybe more empathetic or more understanding, or see things like from a different way. So that, yeah, I think that's also important to do.
In your current job, do you as like a kind of, obviously your job centres around mental health and mental well-being.
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult to then not be okay?
Yeah, that's
because it's like practice what you preach.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And yeah, I do. I think I'm, now that I've been doing it for longer, I'm a lot more self-aware. I've got a few years of experience, I guess, under my belt. I find it easier because I realise it's not a threat to who I am, the business. It's actually a strength to be able to say, yeah, I'm struggling. And I think it was maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, just at the start of COVID lockdown, and my husband got COVID and we couldn't go and see my family at Christmas. They live abroad, they live in different countries. I haven't seen them for, I think, 3 years at this point anyway. And everything was online. Like I'd had to move all of our kind of content, our course online. It was such a busy time. He was on like paid full furlough, having a like paid holiday. And it was like a bit of a rock bottom moment. I was like, this is really hard. And I think the next day, and I was isolating from him because I've got like not the best immune system, and you know, it was quite early on, didn't know the effects of COVID. So yeah, and I had quite a few important like speaking engagements and things, so I didn't want to risk getting it and not knowing I had it and pass it on, or you know. So I was isolating, sleeping downstairs on the sofa. And the next day I went live on Instagram and I just shared and I just said, yeah, life's really tough, you know, but actually what's helping me get through is this, this and this. And a lot of those things were like a really supportive family. I didn't have as big a team at that stage. So family and friends are so important. And, you know, taking things one day at a time, breaking it down, giving myself a bit of grace. So not trying to achieve everything and every day or push myself all the time. Like I've talked a lot about pushing yourself out your comfort zone, but it's knowing when to do that and how much that push should be. Like how big a step out of your comfort zone should you do? And some days like just surviving is enough. And I think that was a really big moment for me to be super vulnerable, and it got such a positive like reception. And that was I think that was actually quite a life-changing moment, because I realized, wow, like people care, like they want you to be okay, but they also want to be there with you when you're not okay and help you get through that. So I think since then I've been a lot more open to kind of saying, gosh, what a busy week, like it's great we've done this and this and this, but I'm exhausted, I'm like struggling here, has anyone got any tips? Like, you know, I don't know it all, and I always try and practice what I'm putting out there and telling others to do, but you know, you can't do that every single day. And I think just being really open with that, it helps others to think, yeah, okay, I don't need to have my life together all the time, or I can have down days too, and from the down days good things can come, or it makes you appreciate the good moments. So it's so empowering to others if you can actually be vulnerable. It's so hard to do, and for me it was like that big moment in at the deep end, like, right, life is hard, here it goes, it's all out. And maybe that needs to be more gradual for some people, so like sharing it with some friends, and then and you know, you don't have to put that out online for everyone to see. If you can share that with a few close trusted friends, that's a win. So I think it takes a lot of strength, to be honest, to be really vulnerable, but it's so important to do, and it helps break down this stigma around mental health.
Exactly, it is still such a taboo, as much as every single thing that every person is doing their little bit to tackle, like it's still such a massive thing.
Absolutely.
And like I know that I still feel like I don't want to burden people with my you know what I mean? It's just we need to continue the conversation. What is like, I know when I've basically had to be at breaking point to be able to like reach out. Do you have any tips for kind of tackling it a little bit earlier on? Yeah,
so something you just said now about you feel like you're burdening people. If you're that friend that someone comes to and they go, look, I'm really struggling, I'd love to talk to you about this. How would you feel in that moment? Like I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I assume you'd feel quite like grateful that they've come to you. You'd feel really like honoured that they want to speak to me about this. That's how people feel when you go to them. Like no one. And then if they did, they wouldn't be that close trusted friend that you would need. But you know, no one's likely to turn around and go, no, I don't have time for you, like sorry, go and struggle on your own, like deal with it yourself. Or you know, like even if they can't in that moment help you, like they'll probably give you some kind of resource or signpost or something, or say like, can you speak to that person? You know, like no one's going to watch you suffer. So I think when we think, oh, I'm burdening people, like no, it's such an honour for that person that you're like choosing to speak to them. It makes them feel good. It actually helps them as well, because often we focus on our own struggles, our own challenges, and one of the best things we can do is look outward and helping others. And I know it sounds so odd when you're feeling low to help someone else, but that can be what pulls you out of your low mood. So you never know how that could impact the person you're speaking to. Like you don't know what's going on for them either. So actually it might open up a conversation for them as well. So when you can flip it and think of it that way, like this is actually a good thing for them. You're honouring this person, and actually you're opening up the conversation for them to share what they're going through. Brilliant. So that takes away that feeling of, oh, I'm putting this out on them, like, you know, I don't want to worry them about this. But I think like regular touch points. So we're all really busy, and so it's easy for us to like maybe mask things or not even realize how we're feeling, and then it's suddenly this big like explosion, or like we break down and like, oh okay, I'm not okay. But actually, if you have touch points with like a few friends that you really trust, it's more likely to come out because your friends can see what you can't. So that's why with the meetings, they're weekly, and we really encourage you to like go every week, because the group will get to know you and they'll see, actually, you've been a bit quieter this week, like, is everything okay? And then they'll coax that out of you. So if you have a few friends that you can just text message check-ins, and if you're not texting back, like, that's either because maybe you're super busy and you need some support, or you need to be told like, hey, have you had some downtime recently? Or, they can help you stop burning out before it gets to that stage, because they can hold you to account and say, look, you've been like super busy lately, which is great, I'm so happy for you, but have you actually had a second to stop? Like, maybe tonight just stay in and like watch a trashy like movie or Netflix series or whatever. So I think just these regular touch points are so important. Like, we're social creatures, like we're made for interacting, and if we can just keep doing that, it doesn't need to get to that stage where you then reach that breaking point. And I think a second point is coping strategies. They're often seen as things we need to do when we're struggling. Like, you need a coping strategy because you're struggling, right? No, like coping strategies are positive things that we should do every day to feel good, to live our best life. So for me, playing sport, like, that's a coping strategy that helps me to release stress so that I don't, feel really anxious or uptight or, overwhelmed. So actually putting some healthy coping strategies in your everyday life is a really good way to not let it snowball to a point where you then need these coping strategies to pull you out of this rut. So I think, again, if you can flip that so that coping strategies are a good thing to have every day, even if you're in a good place, like when you're in a good mood, you hang out with your friends maybe, that's a coping strategy, that's a good thing to do, keep doing that. When you stop doing that, then that's when maybe things start going wrong. So I think, trying to implement coping strategies and having regular touch points is a really good way to kind of avoid it getting to that stage.
I think when it comes down to like having trust for the people that you are kind of opening up to. How do you build trust with someone if it's like an early relationship, would you say?
Yeah, trust is so important, like, you're absolutely right, and it's something that takes years to like build and a second to break. That's so commonly known, isn't it? I think being a trustworthy person, I've spoken earlier about your self-awareness can help with other things. Like, if you are a trustworthy person, that can help build trust, and being vulnerable. So if you feel like this is maybe a friendship or someone that you want to like start building that trust with and count as someone that is there for you, then you need to give, as much as what you want to get back. So if you can be really trustworthy and you can share some vulnerable moments or open up, then they're likely to do that back. But I think small steps, you don't need to suddenly pour out your whole life story. Like, when you can kind of connect with someone, but I think it's okay to take baby steps. Like, there's such a thing as oversharing in the moment and then you regret it afterwards. So I think it's okay to actually be a little bit guarded and to just navigate that until you both feel comfortable. Because sometimes if you go into too much too soon, it can be overwhelming. And if you say your coping strategy is maybe to joke about things, that's just how you process it. And you're talking about something really sad, and like this person is like, oh yeah, but it's okay because like my dog died anyway, they're like joking about something sad. That could really trigger you, and then actually that can have such a negative effect, but it's just because you didn't know each other well enough. So in one sense it's okay, like, be vulnerable, like, put yourself out there, but in the other sense it's like, take steps to get to know each other and build that trust outside of like vulnerable moments, to then know you can trust each other with like the deeper stuff. Because you need to know how they'll bounce off you, how they'll react. Is that what you need, especially in a moment where you're feeling really low? Maybe how they react isn't something that's going to help you feel better, or maybe you need to have an honest conversation and tell them what you need, but you can't do that at first, so you need to first get to that stage. So yeah, baby steps, but kind of at the same time, like, you've got to be trustworthy yourself and open up and share as much as you feel comfortable to, I suppose. And
you touched on it there, like, if you're not ready to share something at the time but you want to come back to it later, what would you say is like a good tip for bringing something up that's like not current, because it's very current. It's like I find it a lot easier to be like, oh, today's a bad day, or like, oh, I didn't sleep very well last night, so therefore I feel bad now. But like, what about something that happened last month or last year or etc.?
Yeah, you're right. It is harder to bring up something. It feels like out the blue, or it feels like a cry for like attention. Like, oh, well, actually, I think in terms of just in general, like catching up with people or trying to share things, I find it helps if you're like doing something. So maybe if you're going for a walk or you're like sitting having a coffee, I think if you like sit down and you're having this, it can feel intense and you can feel awkward about it, and it puts a lot of pressure on the other person. So I think one good practice is to actually tell the person, like, look, I'm not expecting you to have like solutions or answers here. Like, I'm not using you as a counsellor. I just want to like share this with you and talk to you about it. But I'm not like, I haven't got any expectations of you here. You know, I know where I can get support, and you know, maybe you can help me to go and speak to someone about it. But I just would love to share this with you now as a friend. So I think starting with that kind of sets the mood. It sets the expectation, especially if it's going to be something you're bringing up that's like happened a while ago, because they might be thinking, well, what do you want from me here? Like, what, you know, what's the impact of this on you? So I think that can help. And then if you're going for a walk or you're having a coffee, it feels a bit more relaxed maybe, so it takes the pressure off both of you. But again, I think for the person that you're speaking to, it's not really going to be that out of the blue, or they're not going to think, oh my gosh, like, why are you bringing this up? Again, they'll be really honoured that you now feel comfortable to bring that up, and they'll probably keep talking to you, like they'll encourage more and more of that kind of sharing, and who knows, they might even then share something that happened to them. So I think it's not as uncommon or as like silly as it might feel in that moment, as long as you kind of trust that person. But I think it's so great if you can do that. Again, it's such a sign of strength to not just think, well, it's in the past, it's dealt with, I don't need to talk about that now, or it's not relevant anymore, because you know, our past affects how we're currently feeling, and it's a really good reflective mindful practice to think back on situations, and sometimes time is what you needed to be able to talk about it. So it's really unlikely that someone's going to say, are you now ready to talk about that? Are you ready to talk about it yet? Whereas if you can then say, actually, I'd really love to talk to you about what happened a year ago, that's so powerful that you have now reached that place. And again, people would be so honoured to have that conversation with you, I think.
And it's very easy for us to just be like, just take the first step, just do it once. How can students, obviously I'm centering this around students, but obviously also I'm a recent graduate as well, so I'm trying to take some of these things on board too. What is an easy first step that will make a positive change, like an easy kind of habit building activity that we could take on? Yeah,
I think it depends on who you are as a person and what that habit might be, but I think doing it with someone, I think having someone by your side is so important for accountability, for motivation, to make it less daunting. So as a student, if you say a new habit is to be a bit healthier and you want to exercise more, get outdoors a little bit more, you know, the temptation is to think, right, I'm going to run 3 marathons this year, and you know, I'm going to start my training tomorrow by 15k. Great. That's so unsustainable, so unrealistic. You're setting yourself up to fail there. So actually, if you can just break it down, start small, you know, it's these little things. So okay, tomorrow I'm going to put my trainers on and I'm going to go for a walk for like 15 minutes. I'm going to do it at this time with that person. Put your trainers like where you can easily get them. Plan it into a day so that it's not an overwhelming, daunting prospect. It's something that you've committed to, so that in that moment when you feel like, oh, but it's snowing, I don't really want to go outside. Well, you've committed, you're going to do it. You know, you've got your trainers at the door, like grab your coat, like let's go, and your friend's there waiting for you. I think that really helps. So that would be a really good way for exercising. I think if you're trying to eat healthier, don't buy the things that maybe you don't want to have around the house, like the comfort food that's not healthy, especially around exam time. If you have the things that you want to eat, and try and have them where, if you're trying to eat more healthy, for example, then try not to have like the unhealthy food in the house, and instead have a banana where maybe like the chocolate bar would have been, or so that you see it and you think, oh yeah, I'm hungry, I want to have a snack now. So it's like little things, and it's, if you can have those cues, so you've got your trainers at the door to exercise more, like you've arranged to meet with your friend now, or okay, like you're gonna have a study break at this time, there's your banana, it's like ready to go. kettle's boiled, you can have a cup of tea. Like, I think it's trying to set yourself up to succeed. So do whatever you can in preparation, like meal prep, or arrange with your friend to go for a run, or whatever it is. Like, try and do as much as you can in advance, so that in that moment there's like not a lot that can put you off or make you think, oh, it's too much effort, or I can't do it. But I really think having accountability partners, like, I think that's just so important, especially as a student. It can be quite isolating, or you feel like you're the only one struggling with certain things or trying to make a positive change. So if you can try and, you know, get people that are like-minded, that's similar to you, and do it together, I think that really helps.
And so did you struggle at all, like, setting up this business on your own?
Yeah,
because I guess you didn't have that, what you've just been speaking about.
Yeah, you're right. It was me in my bedroom every day, like, navigating it. And actually, it's a long story, but just a summary. I first actually tried to design like a phone app, which is similar to Facebook but for your mental health. And I'd gone to prototype stage. I'd met with all these different designers. I'd invested so much time and energy and money into it, and then realised, no, I've missed the mark here. This is not what my idea initially was. I'd kind of got sidetracked. So I had to stop, come back, and almost start again. And that was really hard. And yeah, I was sort of doing it all alone. But I think because I was so passionate about making a difference and about, you know, helping others, that motivated me to just keep going. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. So I think if you are passionate enough about something, and then you will find a way, even if it's really lonely and it's hard. It almost just keeps that fire lit within you to keep going. But I think knowing, again, being self-aware, knowing what motivates you, like what will help you. So for me, I knew that I needed to go and work from like a cafe or a desk hotspot kind of office, where I could just be around like other creatively minded people. And at Loughborough, you're so fortunate, you know, the enterprise hub, like there's so many places that you can go and get that kind of creative energy from, and people that you can speak to who can inspire you. So yeah, another thing I did, although I didn't have like a team, I went to a lot of sort of business networking opportunities where I could speak to other creative, inspirational, entrepreneurial people, and they really inspired me to think, yeah, I can do this. You've done that, great. Oh, you also struggled in the first 6 months, brilliant. I'm no different. Like, so I think you've just got to find what works for you and go and like sort of seek it out, and just keep persevering. And I think that doesn't just apply to starting a business. I think as a student, you know, when your like dissertation's coming, or if you're going to try and do a master's or something, like just keep persevering, because that struggle you feel in that moment, 2-3 years time, you won't remember it, but you'll have that feeling of like achievement and satisfaction. Yeah, you got through it. You're becoming more resilient by overcoming it, and then actually you'll push yourself more the next time. So I think it's also realizing in that moment where it just feels impossible, or you think, I just can't do it, like one day at a time, keep going, keep persevering, even when it feels really hard to do so. And if you don't have anyone to, you know, kind of support you in it, just remember your why, remember why you're doing it. Try and find some self-motivation to keep getting through it. And the more you get through it, the easier it becomes, and the more sort of determined you are to then see it through and see that finish line. And then the more that happens, the easier it gets the next time through life. So I think, you know, now I've got a team around me, and, you know, there's still challenges and things, but I know what I've overcome already in the past. I can't quite remember. I know it was tough, can't quite remember it. Like, I got through it, and I know I can get through it again. So I think that really helped.
I think that's a really nice place to finish up. Yeah, so thanks so much for coming on. Your story is amazing. Like, I think it really hits a nerve with me, because I try to be very self-aware, and I think it's something that we all need to practice a little bit more. But thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I'm so glad I got to chat to you. I see a lot of like me and you, and vice versa. So I'm glad to have done this with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Yay.